how's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be continuing work on the Z. So unfortunately, over the past few days we had kind of a snowstorm and it's just starting to melt now, which sucks because we're going to be working underneath the car and everything is just soaked and wet. But that being said, today we're going to be focusing on getting a new clutch installed. But before we get the new one in, we have to get the old one out. So if we come under the car here, there's our clutch that's still in the car. So this is a South Bend Stage 2 clutch, and the reason we're taking it off is because we're going with a South Bend Stage 3 clutch. Also, depending on the condition of the flywheel, we may have to get it resurfaced, but it's going to be coming off anyways because we have new ARP bolts that we're going to be installing. And then after that's all done, we can go ahead and get the new one in. So I'm going to get the camera set up, and then I'm going to start by taking out these 6 bolts holding the clutch to the flywheel. Alright, so with the clutch plate removed, we have a good view of the flywheel now. Everything came off nice and smooth. However, you can see some markings on the flywheel surface, so I am going to be getting this resurfaced for the new clutch. But other than that, everything looks perfectly fine up here, and we can go out and take a look at the clutch itself. For the clutch plate and the clutch disc, same thing as the flywheel, so it has a few of the same markings, but nothing crazy. And for the clutch disc, I also don't see anything wrong. There's no chunks missing out of any of the material, and it actually still has a decent amount of meat left on it, so that's good. But like I said, I am going to go get that flywheel resurfaced, and then once I get that done, we can continue on getting the new one in. So with the flywheel being out and getting resurfaced, we can focus on getting the old pilot bushing out and then getting the new one in. So you've probably seen a few videos of people using bread or grease or paper to stuff inside the hole here, and they kind of press it in and it pops the bushing out. You could totally do that, it works, but I've done it before and it's kind of messy and it involves a lot of cleanup. But if you have the right tools, there are better ways to do it. I'm going to be using a slide hammer with this bushing puller on the end, and basically it just slides into the hole here. We're going to tighten it down, and then we'll use the hammer to pull it out. And there we go, no problems at all. So with the old one out, we can focus on getting the new one in. I have it right here. It's a pretty straightforward job, but if you've never done it before, it can be a little bit tricky. So I do have a few little tips for everybody that should make the job a little easier. So what you're going to want to do first is grab some brake clean and just completely clean out the inside of the hole there. You don't want any of the grease or bread or whatever else you use to get the bushing out. So thoroughly clean that out. Now with the inside clean, we're ready to get the bushing ready to be pressed in. And how we're going to be doing that is by using a 14mm socket and an extension. The socket fits just on the outside of the bushing like that. However, quick little tip, instead of using the regular side of the socket, you can take that off and put it on backwards, and now you have a little bit more surface area to contact the bushing. And before this goes in, we're going to be oiling it up a little bit. So just regular engine oil, nothing special. You're going to want to put a thin coat on the inside and a thin coat on the outside of the bushing. And now we can get the bushing lined up, and we're going to be using a hammer to lightly tap it in with the extension and the socket that I showed you earlier. As you get closer and closer to the end, it's going to get a little bit harder, but you want to make sure your taps are still nice and light, and you're not actually going to be going all the way into the end of the crankshaft. There is a very small ridge that's going to bottom the bushing out, so just keep an eye out for that. But when you're done, it should look something like this. So the end of the bushing kind of stops right at this little chamfer here, and you can always check to make sure you did a good job by grabbing your clutch alignment tool, and it should be able to slide in nice and easily. So now that we have the pilot bushing installed into the crankshaft and we have the flywheel back from the machine shop, we can get this installed. So I'm going to be using ARP flywheel bolts, and how I'm going to be installing this is, first off, I'm going to be cleaning all the bolts with brake clean just to get off whatever residue's on there. And then I'm going to be using thread locker on the threads, and then the bolts also come with this ARP Ultra Torque. I'm going to be putting a small amount of this just on the bottom of the head surface there, and then I'm going to be torquing them to 70 foot-pounds, and that should take care of the flywheel install. Now that we have the flywheel bolted to the engine, we can get our clutch mounted. So I talked about this in one of my last videos, but this is a South Bend Stage 3 clutch, and it should be good for around 500, 530 torque, which is definitely more than enough for me. And to go along with that, I also picked up a few brand new OEM bolts that are going to hold the clutch to the flywheel, straight from Nissan. So we're going to be using the clutch alignment tool to get the clutch mounted to the flywheel. But first we have to spray everything down with brake clean, the flywheel and the pressure plate, and then we'll be set to bolt it on. Alright, so we got the clutch plate installed. Everything went pretty smoothly. It just took a little time to get all the bolts in. For those of you that don't know, when you're putting a clutch plate on, you want to make sure you crisscross between the bolts when you're tightening it down, just so everything goes on nice and smooth. And then of course we had our clutch alignment tool in the middle, and if you want to make sure that your clutch is still nice and straight, the one that you just took out, you should be able to slide it in and out no problem. So this one's all good. But other than that though, that takes care of the clutch install, and we are on the home stretch. Transmission should be set to go in very shortly, So keep an eye open for that video. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video.